I am Peggy West. I'm the organizer of this, and I want to say welcome to the webinar today by M2E Engineering. It's SB-4D, Bill Milestone, SIRS, and Engineering Perspective. So this is the debut for us to open webinars in Orlando, and this was launched by M2E, and we hope to have Orlando series of webinars in the upcoming months. Here's some trivia I found. Condos and associations, there are condo units in the state of Florida, 1,528,611. There are total actual condo associations in Florida, 27,537. 75% of the units in the condo associations are with 20 to 49 units per building built prior to 1990. And 59% of the units of condominiums are 50 plus units and were built prior to 1990 also. So most people do need updates, and hopefully these tips will be great. So let's get started and see what this leading engineering company explains to us about the SB-4 law. First, I want to introduce today's sponsors who invited you, and they may have a service you need. And following the webinar, I will send out a sponsor sheet with their name and their company information. And let's get started with Vinteum software. Vinteum is kind of my wind beneath the wings. They're the marketing IT support group. Today we have Yasmin Johannes on. Yasmin, tell us about yourself and what you guys do for associations.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Peggy. So Vinteum software has been in the market for almost 10 years now. We operate across North America. We have two products, Neigbrs by Vinteum, which is a management and communication platform that provides private portals and websites for HOAs and condos. And we also have Inspections by Vinteum, which is a tool for home and property inspections focused on budding inspectors. Our app works on any device from wherever you are, both on and offline. And I'll leave our contact details in the chat box so you can reach out to us if you're interested to learn more. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. And thank you for all you do. Goodness. Next, I want to introduce Art Pragan. He's the Sales Operations Manager for Valcourt Building Services. Art, tell us about yourself and what Valcourt does.
Absolutely. Thank you, Peggy, and thank you for having us. It's a privilege. Good afternoon, everybody. Once again, my name is Art Pragan. I am the Sales Operations Manager for the state of Florida for Valcourt Building Services. Really quick, Valcourt's been around for the last 35 years, serving the condominium and commercial real estate industry. We have performed over 7,000 plus projects, similar to the projects that you guys might be looking to perform in the next couple of years. And we have an annual turnover of about $270 million. Some of the industries that we service, as we mentioned, condominiums are probably 80%, and associations are probably about 80% of our industry. But besides that, commercial real estate, healthcare, hospitality, industrial parks, parking structures, retail buildings, stadiums, and universities. And really quick, just kind of finish up why Valcourt. There's 5 top reasons why associations and property managers choose us. First is communication. I think there's never been a company out there that has failed by over communicating. Communication is the key. I think all of our sponsors up here would probably agree. Accountabilities and warranties, safety and training. What we do, we hang off buildings, high-rise buildings. Safety is the #1 priority. Partnership, when it comes down to partnering with engineering and consultants, as well as associations, management, and the boards, and our project management skills. So as I've mentioned, pleased to be here. It's a privilege. Thank you so much. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation.
Thanks, Art. We appreciate that. Okay, next let's hear from Michelle Sidlaski. She is with City National Bank and the Assistant VP of HOA Relationship Management.
Hi, my name is Michelle. Welcome to the webinar and thanks for having us. I am Michelle Sidlowski and I am with City National Bank. We are the second largest bank, Florida-based bank as a $24 billion bank. We serve over 3,500 associations throughout the state. I'm based in Tampa and cover the west coast of Florida. We are headquartered in Coral Gables. We offer all the service and technology the big banks do with a personal level of attention. My cell phone is on everything. So anytime you need to reach me, people call me by my mobile phone. But we are lending. We do insurance premium financing, insurance proceeds. If you have any 588 claims, construction defects, we offer all of the bank accounts, reserve funds, CDs, everything the big banks offer. And we are a Sync bank partner. So if you are using Sync systems, we are a Sync bank partner as well. So love to help you with your banking and financial needs, or if you're looking for a loan to get you through a project, be happy to help. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Now, did Richard get on?
No, he's not. He has a 12:30 meeting, so he's left it
Okay.
with me. So let me.
Okay. Well, let's mention Richard Garcia. He's the Vice President of City National, the branch that Michelle works at. Next, let's introduce Brian Lancaster with Southern Roofing and Renovations. Brian, tell us about yourself and what Southern Roofing does.
Mute. Sorry. Thanks for having me, Peggy. And this is a great team that you've put together, a great presentation. My current role is Vice President of National Accounts with Southern Roofing and Renovation. And the main thing about us is we are new to Florida. However, we have 15 years in business. We have 22 locations from Arkansas to Florida. We are a platinum preferred contractor with Owens Corning, which puts us in the top 1% of contractors. We do specialize in multifamily re-roof projects. We can provide repair services, which we actively provide repair services in the Central Florida market, down to Sarasota, across to West Palm, and up to the Jacksonville area. We pretty much, the only two areas we're not in Florida is the Panhandle and Miami. We also provide service and replacements on high-rise condos, whether it's a commercial or multifamily high-rise. And we also have a very specific high-rise product. If you have a high-rise condo that needs a roof replacement, it's called a Cat 5 roofing system. It's specifically designed for coastal communities. It was tested 15 years after installation. It took a direct hit from Hurricane Ian, and it had no issues whatsoever. All the buildings around it lost the roofs. This roof did not. It comes with a true hurricane warranty, a 20-year NDL, and a true 150 to 180 mile an hour wind warranty. So those are some highlights. I love what the gentleman said earlier. Communication is number one. You cannot over communicate. That's absolutely my priority. And I love to build relationships. I like to get to know you. I put my link to my business card there. You can download it. We can connect, and I would love to see how I can help you out with any roofing projects.
Very good, and good luck, and congratulations on your new position. Okay, next I want to introduce from Becker Lawyers. We have two people on today. I'll start with Patrick Howell. Patrick, you want to tell us about yourself and Becker's prestigious reputation with the associations?
Yes, hi, I'm on with Lee Moran. She's here with me observing so that next time she can take over and do what I'm doing now. It's really an honor to be on a panel with such a wide variety of amazing specialists. I am with Becker and Polyakoff. We're a full service law firm. Most people that are on this webinar have probably heard of us in the community association context. We've got more board certified community association lawyers than any other Florida firm, but we also have more board certified construction lawyers than any other firm. And that's what I do. I've been board certified for 6 years and love this area of law. So if you've got contracts that need to be reviewed, we can do that. If you've got construction defects, we help with that. And then we also are uniquely specialized with both our community association lawyers and our construction lawyers to help with the Condo Safety Act. It's really a new piece of legislation, and it's got everybody scratching their heads and asking questions. I love answering questions about it. So my email and phone number are in the chat. So please hit me up. Thank you.
Great, thank you, welcome. And it is something new. I hadn't heard about that. I would like Lee to say a few words about yourself, if you don't mind.
I'm the marketing liaison for the Becker team. I'm looking forward
Okay.
to working with a lot of you. So
Okay, great. Awesome, welcome. Okay, what I wanted to do now is introduce to you the marketing director for M2E Engineering, Autumn O'Brien. Autumn was actually more instrumental in pulling a lot of these sponsors together in the Orlando area because I'm down in South Florida. Autumn, tell us about yourself and all the amazing things you do for M2E.
Hi, so I support operations with proposal reviews, and I am out and about in Orlando, just letting everybody know about M2E. I've been here for 4 years, and Rudy, take it.
There you go. All right, so I do have the pleasure right now to introduce Rudy Martin. He is the Director of Strategic Business Development for M2E. He is a very distinguished speaker and also very well known in the industry. Having webinars in Orlando was a vision of Rudy's, and today kicks it off. So Rudy is known for being a leader and working with associations. Rudy, take it away.
Peggy, thank you. I'm excited to be here. I'm excited to kind of do the first Orlando-centric webinar, even though we put it on LinkedIn, and of course we invite all of our friends from all over the state to join. So I'm sure that we have people from Miami and Naples and Jacksonville and the Panhandle like we always do. And I would like to thank everybody for joining. 128 attendees, not bad for our first run in Orlando. We've seen that number be as high as 500 sometimes when we have something interesting to say. So hopefully the word spreads. We're going to be doing more of this exact webinar, and a few house cleaning items. There's a Q&A button in the bottom. Go ahead and type in your question and we'll go ahead and get to it. We're not going to wait to the end. Autumn's going to politely interrupt me as we go on. She's probably not going to be able to get them all in, but we'll answer some of them at the end, and we'll have a list of those questions, and what we don't get answered on the webinar, we'll go ahead and answer at some point. We don't need your CAM number. You fill that in. So we will give it, this isn't a CU class anyway. But you did fill in your information. Peggy's going to send out a list of all the sponsors and their emails in one foul swoop. So look out for that, and you'll be able to reach out and contact anybody. And their slides will be available. We have kind of a condensed bullet form, if you will, about the slides. And if you need this presentation done for your property management company, your property management individual, the board, at all, let us know. We'll be more than happy to do this. Education is important right now. There's a lot of gray area, and we want to try to clean that up. So let's go ahead and get started. Share my screen. And here we are. Okay. So milestone inspection and structural integrity reserve study. I'm going to go ahead and close some of these windows that I have on my screen. So this is an engineer's perspective. So we're not going to go into deep detail about the bill. We've been kind of hammered over the head about that. We can have a different conversation on that. What we're going to go through is exactly what an engineer is looking for. How do we prepare? How do we plan? What exactly are we inspecting? What are we looking for? And then the report, how do we fill that out? And what exactly do we send to the local municipalities? So here we go. So the House and the Senate, May 26, 2022, approved, DeSantis signed, and basically it states that a condo and a co-op, 25 years or 30 years of age, 3 or more floors, is going to have a milestone inspection and a structural integrity reserve. So the milestone inspection is a structural inspection of the building performed by a licensed architect or engineer. The purpose of the milestone is to ensure a building's safety through assessment of its structural components. We're going to talk a lot about structural components as we go along, so just remember that phrase. There's 2 phases to the milestone. The first phase is a visual examination of habitable and non-habitable areas of the building, including major structural components of a building. Provide an assessment of the structure conditions of the building's structural deterioration. The deliverables on that is a signed and sealed copy of the inspection report, a summary of the findings and recommendations and materials on how to fix it. Basically, this is your primary checkup, okay? When you go, and that's what we're doing here, we're doing a building checkup. When you go to your primary, they're going to see that little freckle and they're going to say, hey, go see a specialist. That's exactly what phase one is. Phase one is identifying that something wrong. We're going to give you brief descriptions on what you need to do to fix it. Now, if we do see some deterioration, we're going to go to phase two, which is basically a minor or major concrete restoration. We're fully going to do a invasive or non-invasive deep dive into the property. We're going to write repair specifications. We can assist in finding a contractor. We're going to make sure that contractor is repairing the distressed areas to code. And basically, like I said, it's a minor or major concrete restoration. So that's phase one, figuring out if something's wrong. And if something is wrong, then we have to go to phase two. Then the milestone inspection. So here are some of the requirements. Buildings COs issued before July 1st, 1992 must perform this before December 31st, 2024. So the time is ticking. 3 miles from the coastline, if you're 25 years, you got to get it done. Greater than 3 miles from the coastline, 30 years, and every 10 years thereafter. So this report will be signed and sealed, and it will be provided to the local building officials. So why are we giving it to the local building officials? Well, because they're the ones that are actually issuing you a letter. So they're going to issue a letter, or you can get out in front of this and get ahead of the letter. And then within 180 days of receipt, you have to show that you have completed or taken action is the verbiage they use. Taken action is a gray area. They're going to address that in the glitch bill, and we'll kind of get to that glitch bill later on in these slides. But after you get a letter from your local municipality, you've got 180 days to take action. And then if you don't, the local law enforcement, or the local agency has the right to come out and look on their own and determine if the building is safe for the residents and decide if they want to kick people out. You want to avoid that. There also comes a hefty fine with that and some other legal ramifications. Let's get into the structural integrity reserve study. The last two words of this is probably pretty familiar, reserve study. Most managers, most board members, they're very familiar with the reserve study. This is very similar to your reserve study, but we're only looking at the structural components. And those structural components are defined clearly as roof, load-bearing walls, floor, foundation, fireproofing and fire protections, plumbing, electrical, waterproofing, windows, and any other item over $10,000. If you have a generator that's over $10,000, we're going to do a structural integrity reserve study on that. Is it structural? Not necessarily, but the way that this is written, they want to make sure that other items that are very important aren't overlooked. If you've got a huge fountain next to your porte-cochere and it's $20,000, that will be included in that reserve study, and you will have to put those funds aside. It is mandatory. They cannot be waived. So some of the requirements, complete at least every 10 years, performed by an engineer or a licensed architect, and unit owners may not vote no reserves or lesser reserves set forth in this report. So that's the big difference between this structural integrity reserve study. So that's just a brief snapshot. Let's get into exactly what we do, because that's what we're here, right? So the milestone inspection, phase one, we're going to talk about the plan. We're going to talk about the inspection, and we're going to talk about the report. So first things first, there's a plan. We need to do a preliminary building review to come up with pricing metrics, because not all buildings are the same. 2 7-story buildings that are 50 units, those aren't going to be priced the same. We don't know. One might have 4 elevator shafts compared to 10 elevator shafts. One might have balconies that wrap all the way around the building. The other one might have balconies just on the front. We need to go on these balconies, at least 20% of these balconies minimum. So just because the buildings are the same size, same square footage, same unit count, doesn't mean that they're going to be priced and they're going to need the same amount of time to do this report. So we're going to do a preliminary building review, and please vet your architects and engineers properly. They're going to have to do this as well. It shouldn't be a one-stop, one price, one size fits all. So before we step foot on the property, we're going to do a document review. We're going to review that letter that you got from your municipality. We're going to view any previous engineering documentations. Have you had any engineering in the past, whether by us or somebody else? We want to review that. We want to kind of know the building. We're going to look at permits, what type of concrete work has been done on this building. And we're going to look at the building schematics. How was the building created? You know, does it have one of those cool roofs that Brian was talking about? I don't know. We're going to look, and we're going to do as much research as possible. And then we're going to talk to the property. You know, do you have any water intrusion? Did you have previous issues, defects? Did you go through a 558 claim? We want to see all of that. This can take anywhere from 2 to 4 days before we ever step on the property. What this is going to do is it's going to save a lot of time when we're at the property. So if you're not seeing this in your proposals, when you're going to get these two things, you might want to talk to the engineer and architect. You want to make sure that they're doing the plan and doing the due diligence before they get out to the property. So after we look at all the documents, we feel like we got a good handle on that. Then we're going to look at the building. So let's look at this building. This building is being held up by steel and concrete. And that steel and concrete is a little bit more fragile than one might care to admit. And it's very susceptible to moisture and salt air. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're trying to protect the bones of this building, that rebar, the concrete, which is basically sand, lime, bonding agents. It's very susceptible to running water, to salt air. So we want to make sure that all of those elements are being protected. And that's why we put a scratch coat and a stucco coat on top of all that block, and we paint it. And that paint, like we say, we don't care if you paint the building Argyle. Okay, what we care about is that it's waterproofed correctly. We care that the roof is not taking on water. We care that the post pockets aren't taking on water. So we're going to assess the structural components during the milestone. We're going to look at the walls. We're going to look at the roof, the beams and columns when exposed, because keep in mind, the phase one is just a visual examination. It is non-invasive. We're going to look at the slab edges. Those are a big culprit down here because the tops of those balconies floors are not waterproofed. Per code, you don't have to, which is something I think needs to change. We're going to look at the railing and the railing post pockets. We're going to look at the structural members, the ceiling slabs. Sometimes in the units, especially down in Miami and Tampa and Jacksonville, they have a lot of loft units and they have exposed steel members or exposed ceilings or columns. If those are exposed and we can lay our eyes on them, we want to look at those inside the building. And of course, we're going to look at the exterior parking structures. So let's talk about the wall. There's no such thing as a little crack. Whenever we hear the term, well, there's just a little crack, I don't think you can appreciate how much water can get into a crack. So we're going to have tons of water pouring into this crack, and it's going to be getting through that block. It's going to be getting into that rebar. Once it gets into that rebar is going to rust and it's going to spall, and it can push out 18 inches of concrete. So we want to make sure that depending on how deep that rebar is embedded into that concrete, that it's being totally protected. So obviously this is something that we want to fix. There's a deeper crack in the middle, top middle on a slab edge. We have some cracks up here that need to be addressed. Bottom left is where we had the laminated stucco. Stucco was pulling away from that block. Maybe if it wasn't getting water directly into it, it's still getting air, and in air is a lot of moisture. And that moisture just in that air, especially in Florida, we know how humid it is. That air is going to seep through that block and it's going to hit that rebar, and we're going to have some spalling. And in cases we have it in the bottom middle, we have it way too thin. And then sometimes we have it way too thick. So we're going to look at the wall, and that's exactly what we look at. So this gets a failing grade. We know that we're going to have to go to phase 2. We're not going to document the quantities and all of that. Right now, it's just a visual inspection, just like going to your primary when you're doing a checkup. And obviously we have a failing grade here. So those are some of the things that we look for when we go out to a building. Then we look at the roof. Oh, Brian's cringing right now looking at this roof. He hates it. So this roof, obviously this waterproof membrane has deteriorated, and that is concrete. On a horizontal surface, that concrete, that water is sitting, concrete is somewhat porous. That water is getting into that concrete. This needs to be protected. We're going to look at this. We're going to come up with a vague recommendation before we go into phase 2. Then we're looking at beams and columns. No such thing as a little crack, because those little cracks, water gets in, and that rebar next to that slab edge, it's supposed to be at least 3 inches from the edge of that concrete. It wasn't, so it probably took on more moisture than it should. It rusted and it spalled. If that spalls enough, there's not going to be any concrete there. Concrete's pretty important when we're talking about beams and columns. It holds up your building. So we want to make sure on your beams and columns, we're looking for this and we're correcting this as soon as possible. Then we're looking at slab edges and balconies. So the slab edge on the left, that's what it looked like before we chipped it away. And that's what it looked like after it was chipped away. So there's, like I said, there's no such thing as little cracks. And all the surface of that patio was painted, probably wasn't waterproofed. Waterproof and painting are two totally different things when we're talking about balconies. And believe it or not, that horizontal surface on top of those balconies by code doesn't have to be waterproofed. It's highly recommended, but when water pours down and it sits on that porous concrete, it's not like a shear wall where it's just running off. It could be pooling there if it's not pitched correctly. And that's getting into that rebar. And when it gets into that rebar is going to rust. And we've seen a lot of, probably the most expensive repairs are some of these balconies. And those balconies can run towards those sliding glass doors. And what needs to happen is a contractor has to chip that away, and they have to wire brush it and they have to make it clean if there's something that's still there and hasn't rusted. And we're going to chip and we're going to clean that till we see 3 inches of silver. Well, that rust can run all the way past those sliding glass doors. So you have to remove your sliding glass doors, and we're going to chase that rebar right through your living room. No more Sunday or Saturday football for you in the time being. And if we keep chasing that rebar all the way through the kitchen, well, we're going to pull up your cabinetry. And then if we keep chasing it, it's probably going to go into the catwalk in the inside of the building. I've seen this with my own eyes. So we need to make sure that this building is being evaluated and we're getting the health check that it requires, because we want to eliminate this. Because right now, this probably won't be a very costly repair, but if that rebar runs through those sliding glass doors and into that living room and through the kitchen and into the interior catwalk, we're looking at a hefty repair. So those are some of the things that we're going to look at on the slab edges. So same thing with the slab edges, the railings and the post pockets, deterioration, water's pouring in, it's taken on water. We can tell right away, and that needs to be corrected. So if that's not corrected, we're going to have the same problem that we did on that slab edge. We're going to have that deterioration. So we're going to look at all of your post pockets during this milestone inspection. Exterior parking garage. So believe it or not, there's so many parking garages that don't have waterproof membrane, especially ones that are elevated 3, 4, 5 stories. That surface needs to be protected. And if it isn't, you're going to run into situations like this, and it's extremely costly, let alone a life safety issue. So when we get to the parking garage, we're going to look at things like this. So those are the structural components that we look at when we're going out to a milestone. This can take anywhere from 4 days on a small building and anywhere from 10 to 12 days on a large building. Could take anywhere from 2 to 3 engineers out there inspecting, documenting, taking notes, being extremely thorough. So the report. So after we review all this information, we're going to go ahead and we're going to put together the document. This document can take anywhere from 2 days to 6 days. I've seen these reports from anywhere from 10 pages to 60 pages long, depending on how bad and how thorough of a job needs to be completed on this. So we're going to deliver to the local government. You've got 365 days to take action to rectify the issues after the 180 days from when you receive the letter. It's going to bear a symbol of a licensed engineer or architect. This has to be a PE. It can't be an engineer staff 1, 2, or 3, or a mechanical, electrical, plumbing engineer. It has to be a PE or an architect. And then in the report, we're going to summarize the means and methods of inspection. We looked with our eyes, right? Because it's non-invasive, but they still require that. Some of the testing, if we're measuring things, the location where we're taking these inspections, and state if it's unsafe or unsafe. Can you live there, or do you have to move immediately? I'm in the Miami headquarters. Autumn's in our Orlando office, and we have one in Tampa and West Palm as well. I know in Miami that there's anywhere from 14 to 16 buildings that they deemed inhabitable. People had to leave immediately. Some of those are not able to return. A case was just won in Wisconsin where the building was under so much neglect and the insurance company did not want to pay for it. So those residents have to pay for the demolition of the building and they still have to pay their mortgage. The insurance company sided with the courts sided with the insurance company because the building was just so neglected after so many engineers' recommendations. And that's why this legislation was pretty much passed, something of that nature. Or it was passed to keep the insurance companies here. We can talk about that separately. My wife doesn't want to hear another word about it. So if anybody does want to talk about it on the side, I'd be more than happy to, because I'm a nerd like that. But so upon completion of phase 1 or phase 2 milestone inspection, the association must distribute a copy to each of its unit owners. You guys have rights to look at this. Before, the inspection went no further than the board or the property manager, and they could sit on it. We're trying to eliminate that. And that's why everybody is going to go ahead and have access to this reporting. You got to post it in a conspicuous place. We don't want to get all into that. If you have questions on kind of these details, Patrick's the perfect man to ask for that. He can get legal on you. So that's basically what the report. We have some samples of kind of what a report looks like. So we're going to have the table of contents. Okay, we're going to say where we found delaminated stucco, where we found the expansion joint. We're going to have an executive summary, who was there, what units we went into, what corridors we looked at, and this can get extremely in depth. This is just a small snapshot of about a 30-page report. Then we're going to talk about the priority items. We have delaminated concrete in the ceiling in unit 206, unit 209. We have deteriorated expansion joint that could be inside or outside of the unit. We back this up with tons and tons of photographs. Then we have the scope of assessment, kind of what we need to do to go ahead and fix these items. And then we have an evaluation based on the deficiencies and the locations. We make some suggestions that can be pretty lengthy on exactly what to do with these items. So after everything that we've seen, I think everybody can agree that we have substantial deterioration and we're going to go to phase 2.
Rudy, can I interrupt you for a second?
Yes,
we have
please.
a few questions about phase 1 that I
Yes.
wanted to address before you moved on to phase 2.
Perfect.
What about seawalls?
Yes, seawalls are over $10,000. They will be included in the milestone reports.
And architect versus engineer, difference, pros and cons.
It's like asking me what my favorite kid is, you know? It's my daughter, by the way, if you're wondering. Kidding. So I think technically they are all qualified. Whether you're qualified or you're experienced are two different things. I would make sure that you're vetting these engineers and architects properly and making sure that they've done this type of work before. Because in Miami-Dade, the 40-year inspection has been around for decades. And that means every time a building hits 40 years of age, 3 stories or higher, it has to have this milestone type inspection. It used to be called a 40-year recertification. And that's for all buildings, hotels, condos, bank buildings, it doesn't matter. So we have the experience that we've already done this. We've already done this. It was just called something different. So we have a process. We have people that are trained that just do this. So we have the experience. So whether they're qualified or experienced, those are two totally different things. So make sure that you're vetting them properly and they have experience doing this. We have a lot of engineers coming down from DC and Maryland, and nothing against those. I think they're going to do a great job once they learn the construction of Florida, because I think everybody that lives in Florida can agree it's a different animal than any other state in the country, right? So, you know, dealing with the soil samples when we get to phase 2 and we get a little bit invasive, dealing with some of the components that they might not be used to in other states could present a challenge to them until they can catch up. And I think they can catch up pretty quickly. But to answer your question, I don't think it matters how qualified they are. I think it matters how experienced they are. But technically, any architect or engineer, PE, can present this report. You can decide on your vetting process.
There's a lot of questions. How many do you want?
Keep them coming. Let's clean it up.
Okay. Would elevators fall under this structural requirement?
Yes. because in the structural, in the elevator shaft, they build those to be somewhat of a structural component to the building. It's sometimes, it's never just, well, not never, but it's not going to be a freestanding kind of elevator shaft. Maybe if it's something cool and it's glass, maybe it is at that point, but yes, usually it is structural.
Are there forms for the milestone report like there is for the Brevard certification process?
I wish, but there isn't. So all of the counties have a milestone inspection. Not all the counties, but a lot of counties do, and they have a form and they want you to complete A, B, C, and D. That's not this requirement. We hope that this in March, they're doing a glitch bill and they hope to clean up some of this. And we hope that there is a clear delineation of what exactly we need to be looking at. It says structural components. So that's going to be up to all the engineers' interpretation of what they feel a structural component is. So hopefully there'll be more clear definitions. I'm not saying you should wait, because an engineer is going to properly look at everything. And if they need to change that report, they can tweak it. But there is not a exact form. They're just looking for certain things to be accomplished, but a form would be great.
You mentioned every item over 10,000 would be included in the SIRS, and mentioned that even non-structural items would be included.
Yep.
Would that include hallway carpet, lobby renovations, or other cosmetic items? They're over 10,000, but that seems to be excluded on the purpose from the SB-4D requirements.
Great question. And that is one item that is going to be cleared up in the glitch bill. We're only doing structural items or items that would impair structural items if they weren't working. So a generator, if the power goes out, could have some plumbing, electrical. A fountain, if the fountain's on the second floor and that leaks, could have some. Your lighting fixtures, if you're in Miami Beach and you have $10,000 lighting interior hallway fixtures, and that obviously totals, $1 million in lighting, we're not putting that in the structural integrity reserve study.
What about boardwalks to the ocean from the building?
No.
Please share best practices for vetting engineers beyond checking licensing and such.
You want to make sure that they have experience doing this. And this is my opinion. You want to make sure that they have experience doing this. You want them to show you examples of 3 or 4 that they've recently done within the last 3 to 6 months of buildings that are similar to yours. You want to call that property manager and that board of director and you say, hey, how was Rudy and Autumn at M2E? They were awesome. I hope they say that. And so, yeah, you want to properly vet it just like you would vet any other contractor, extremely thorough.
Our property is not due for the phase 1 inspection until 2028. We have to do a SEER study now and then pay to have the actual inspections done when we get the notice. Is there any way to avoid paying the $10,000 for the study now and then $10,000 in 5 years for phase 1 inspection? $20,000 in building research seems a bit harsh before we even start the repairs.
$20,000 all depends on kind of your building size. So if you were quoted that, we would love to kind of take a look at that. I think you're too far away at 5 years. If you were 3 or 2 or 1 years, I'd say get it all done and, kill 2 birds with 1 stone, but a lot can happen in 5 years. I would hate to do a milestone inspection and then you have other elements, unless you totally fail your milestone inspection. So I think 5 years is a little far away, but it doesn't mean that you can't have an evaluation, even a loose, quick evaluation to say, hey, do we have any structural things that we need to deal with? Because just because you have to do it in 5 years, but you have some structural issues there, you don't have to follow the milestone. If something's wrong with you and your checkup isn't until December and it's January 1st, you're not going to wait until December to go to the doctor and fix what's wrong with you. So go ahead and get that looked at now. What we can do and what a lot of other firms can do that are thinking outside the box is we can do a property condition assessment. That's the same thing as a milestone. We're just not doing the paperwork for the state. So we can do a property condition assessment. We can find things that are wrong with the building. We can get a contractor out there to fix it. And then she's already gotten her facelift. And then when you do the milestone in 5 years, it's going to be less less complex because you've already had that work done. So if you see some visual ailments and deterioration with your building, you don't have to wait to 5 years. You can have a milestone type investigation now. You can fix the problems now. And then in 5 years, hopefully you've passed the milestone with flying colors and you're not put on the state's radar because you've already done the milestone before the milestone was due. So don't wait 5 years. Don't necessarily get a milestone, but you can definitely get a property condition assessment. And we'd love to talk to you more about that.
Let me keep going.
Yeah, give me one more.
All right. Are detached pools included in the SIRS?
No. If they're not structural, if they're ground level, we're not going to do them. If they're on, well, if they're, that would be attached. So detached pools, ground level, 20 yards from your building, no. The pool equipment, maybe, because if it leaks and it stops pumping, could it leak into the soil and get in your building? I mean, you can kind of go down the rabbit hole, but no, we wouldn't look at that. Okay, that was one more. Okay, let's go to phase 2. Phase 2 is going to be quick. Before we get into phase 2, let's talk about phase 1. We talked about a lot of these things. I bring up health check. In my 20s, I used to go to the doctor and I had to do my annual health check. And I said, hey, doc, can you take my blood? I got a 2 o'clock tea time. Let's go ahead and wrap this up. Now that I'm 46 years old, I have a beautiful family. I have a history of family health ailments. I go in there and I run the whole gamut. And I say, take the blood, take the vitamin profile. And then when we get that back, let's really build a plan to go and look at a specialist so we can get these things corrected. You have to decide how deep down the rabbit hole you want to go as far as a quality engineer when it comes to this. What kind of quality do you want your building's life to have? Because it's coming to cost, and right now it's kind of the Wild West. And if we bid a project at 20 grand, that number was used earlier, so I'm just going to use it again. They're getting a proposal for half that at 10 grand. So an engineering firm is very similar to a law firm. We have billable hours. We have a staff 1, a staff 2, a staff 3 engineer. We have a PE, we have mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and then we have the principals of the firm. The principals at the firm are billed at an extremely high rate. They're not going to be touching this milestone project. We will have a PE there, but we'll also have a phase 1 and a phase 2 there doing some of the document creation and all that stuff to kind of save money. So I ask anybody out there with any kind of common sense that if you're getting a bill for half of what the other person is, it's just billable hours, which means time, which means they're not spending as much time doing the due diligence. They're not spending as much time doing the inspection. They're not doing as much time filling out a thorough report. So if it's half the cost, you're getting half of the inspection. You're me in my 20s when you're going to there and say, hey, draw blood, I want to make my tea time. So just keep that in mind when you're reviewing these kind of proposals. And the proposal fee for the milestone, if we have to get into phase 2, it's minuscule to what that project would be. We've seen phase 2s be anywhere from hundreds of thousands of dollars to double-digit millions. The engineer cost on this milestone was only $30,000. So this is something that you don't want to go with the lowest bidder. You don't want to go cheap. You want to go with somebody qualified. That's one thing that I really want to recommend when we're wrapping up this that phase 1 is to kind of really think of this as a health check and use some common sense. And we'll be happy to break that down for you. Phase 2, because I know we got a lot of questions. Phase 2, we're going to go quick. So phase 2, we're going to prepare construction documents for bidding and permitting. We can provide assistance on that. Construction administration documents. We can help you hire a contractor. And it's going to be the same thing as a concrete restoration, but we have a component that we have to satisfy the state. So there's going to be a very lengthy milestone inspection at the end, and that's going to kind of be your final, and that's kind of going to get the state and the local municipalities. So that's basically a phase 2. A phase 2 is basically a very minor or very major concrete restoration, or it's nothing. So there's a lot of people, and I'm sure this question is out there. I just completed my 40-year inspection. Do I still have to do a milestone? Yes, you still have to do a milestone. But guess what? You're going to pass with flying colors because you just rehabbed the whole building. The engineer that did that should provide that at a very low cost because he's already done the preliminary work. He's already knows the building. All he has to do is write the report. So there are going to be cases where if your building's properly maintained or you just did a concrete restoration that you won't have to go to phase 2. Consider yourself extremely lucky, but you've already kind of spent that money. So there are cases where you won't have to go to phase 2 if you just did your 40-year recertification. But this 40-year recertification, that was one report. The milestone is a separate report. It's a new type of report. They're very similar, but because somebody asked for both, you have to do the 40-year recertification and you also have to do that milestone in that SIRS. I hope that answers the question because I'm sure it's out there. So I'm going to fly through this quick because this isn't anything that earth-shattering as far as this information. So the SIRS, a structural integrity reserve study, same thing as a reserve study. We're just looking at the structural components. So we talk about the plan. We're going to do the same thing. The study must include a visual inspection. We need to list the remaining useful life, the estimated replacement costs of the structure, the fireproofing replacements that exceed $10,000. So we're going to look at your previous reserve studies. We're going to look at previous proposals, try to get an idea of what the pricing is. The pricing in Orlando is totally different than the pricing in Miami and Jacksonville and the Panhandle. Florida's a weird animal like that. We're going to look at some of your past invoices to kind of see how much stuff costs. Now we have tons and tons of data on this, decades and decades of data on this because we've already been doing these reserve studies. So we go ahead and we reference that to make sure nothing's completely out of line. But we have clear components: roof, load-bearing wall, floor, foundation. Let's talk about foundation. What's the replacement cost for a foundation? It's a new building, and we're not going to do that. So the foundation, what we're going to do in that cost is what it's going to cost you for that preventative maintenance to make sure that your foundation is intact. This is also a visual examination, a visual inspection. So this is non-invasive. So we can't see the foundation in a lot of ideas. So we're not really going to put a price on that, but we are going to put a price on what the preventive maintenance is. People might perceive that differently. Everyone has their own interpretation on how they want to handle that, but that's how we're going to handle it. Electrical system, waterproofing, exterior painting, that's pretty easy. But windows, well, that's another one where they say, well, the homeowners are responsible for their windows. We don't care. There's a line item there. We're going to tell you how much it costs to fix the windows, and you're going to have to put that in a bucket because if they leak, it's going to cause concrete deterioration. If the board is going to pay for it, the building's going to pay for it, or the unit owner is going to pay for that. We'll let you guys fight that. Call Patrick. He can help you with that. But we're not getting into exactly who needs to pay for it. We're just going to tell you how much they cost or what the remaining useful life of those windows are. And then at the end of that useful life, how much it's going to cost. So component funding, it's very similar to what property managers and boards have already seen. It's a funding kind of analysis. I'm going to take electrical systems, line 5 diesel generators. You've got $6,600 in the bank. The estimated replacement cost is $8,600. That means you need to put $80,000 in the bank. There's 5 years of useful life. So you got to put $16,000 every year away, divided by how many units. That's how much your association dues are going to go up. Unfortunately, you can't waive this. So that's component funding. And then the cash flow analysis, that's very similar to what you guys have already seen. We're going to kind of break down these things are going to hit. That generator is going to hit in 5 years. And then in 3 years, the roof's going to hit. And then in 10 years, the parking lot resurface is going to hit. So we're going to do a cash flow analysis to tell you exactly how much you need to save at certain times of your projects. And then we have the report. So this report, we had components in this category and we had future costs, and we can break that down with an analysis result from a component funding and a cash flow analysis. So this is all pretty boilerplate. We are teaming with a lot of reserve companies because reserve companies that typically did your reserve studies, they don't have engineers. So we've been teaming with those. You have to be an engineer and architect to inspect the building. You don't have to be one to write the report. So we are working with some of the reserve specialists. Sometimes there's an association that really wants to use the reserve specialists that they had. So we're just doing the inspection. We're not doing the report. So those are also options out there for everybody, just to let you know.
Can I interject something?
Yes.
I just wanted to mention, one of our sponsors here today is Vinteum Software, and they do an excellent job of communication with their website. Their website is great for posting all this information, and you can be as transparent as you want to be with your community, so they know that you are working on this as a board and a manager. And it's just an outstanding tool. So if you don't have a website, I know a lot of associations are hesitant to have a website because you don't have to be, unless you have 150 units, but even so, it's great for communication. So you should
Yes.
take a look at that.
I agree, Peggy. That's a great comment. Apologize for the booth number. I just did this slide at a trade show on, what's today? I don't even know what day it is. Last week, maybe. I don't know where I am. So let's go through some of these questions. We got about 10 minutes left. You want to fire them at me, Autumn?
Yes. Just did a 50-year certification. Is a milestone still required?
Yep, absolutely. Kind of just talked about that a second ago. You'll still have to complete that form. Hopefully that engineer that did your 50-year inspection has all the relevant information. They don't have to go back out there and do the walk and do all the due diligence. So they should be able to turn that around with a little bit more effective cost.
We are in Broward and did our 40-year, and the follow-up 10 is in process. Will it count as this new milestone inspection phase 1?
So it will count as long as that engineer fills out the proper documentation and submits the milestone report. So you got to satisfy both. In a long enough timeline, hopefully next year, there won't be any more recertifications as far as 30-year, 40-year, or 50-year. It will just be the milestone inspection. Also, in regards to turnovers, there's no such thing as a turnover report anymore. That is also called a milestone inspection. So new developments, when that gets turned over, it's no longer called a turnover report. It's called a milestone inspection. And that SIRS is also due when the building is turned over. They want to tell you how much you need to save right from the beginning. So the milestone is going to be the only thing that is going to be required. But unfortunately, they're caught in limbo where they're doing the 40-year, the 30-year, or the 50-year. You just got to submit a separate report for that.
If a club is standalone and one-story structure included in the milestone or SIRS study?
No. So we have a community and it has six-story buildings and it has 50 two-story townhomes and it has a single-story clubhouse. The milestone is only going to be for those units above 3 stories. That doesn't mean the other ones, we can do a property condition assessment. So what I would recommend doing is to do a property condition assessment on the whole building, and on those ones that are required, we'll do a milestone report and submit it to the local municipality. We're doing one right now where they're like, well, we don't want to ignore all the 2-story buildings in our thing. Can you still look at those? Yeah, we'll do a property condition assessment of everything. And then the buildings that it's required for, we'll submit a milestone report. So no, if you don't have to do the single-story structures or second-story structures.
I'm confused about establishing the mandatory SIR fund by the end of 2024. If our milestone is not due for 5 years, we have no reserves. Will an evaluation by you give me the dollar amount that we need in our SIR fund? The building has never done a reserve study.
Yes, we will. So we will tell you exactly how much you need to start reserving and when that's due by. And unfortunately, that's what's going to do. Look, we're really empathetic to this. We were not popping champagne bottles in the office when this happened. We had tons of work. We had a very extremely successful business. I appreciate why this happened. I live in South Florida. I know people that were involved in Surfside. One of my best friends, which is an engineer, he's on part of the task committee. He was there from day 2 to day 17. We've had lengthy conversations about it. I appreciate that something is being done. Also, the insurance companies were bailing on Florida. DeSantis had to do something, okay? And he said, look, I'm going to make sure that these buildings take care of themselves. But, you know, all of my friends and family and people on fixed income that I know, this is going to be a huge cost to living in a condo. And your dues are going to go up and you can't waive those reserves. And Surfside didn't happen because they didn't have the money. Or because they had the money and they just chose not to do it. those fees were anywhere from $100,000 assessment. They just couldn't do it. And banks, technically couldn't give them the money. And if you have banking questions on that, please, reach out to City National, Michelle. So we're very empathetic to going on. And yes, you are going to have to do that SIRS, and it's not going to be easy. And that's why I'm available. Autumn's available. Anybody who's on my team available to have this conversation with you or your board or anybody else. And of course, it's 100% free of charge. I spend all of my time now making sure that people are educated on this. So I just want to put that out there. Let's bang a few more out. We got 5 minutes. I want to be respectful of everyone's time.
Does Florida have enough licensed engineers to meet demand for all the required studies?
No, if you have kids and they're in college, tell them to go be an engineer. We are hiring, and it's just something that isn't studied in the States as much as it needs to be, especially in South Florida. So are there enough engineers to get this done in time? I don't know. Is there enough qualified engineers? Probably not. Is there enough contractors, Art? Is there enough dry goods as far as concrete to fix all of the buildings that never had an inspection, like the ones in Jacksonville and Inglewood and Daytona? No, there isn't, but it's still a requirement. And they don't think about that when they pass legislation. They just think about correcting something that they saw was wrong. And it sucks, but we have to move on.
How do we reserve for structural items like foundations? Is that complete rebuilding? And isn't that why we have building insurance?
Oh, building insurance, man, I wish we had an insurance person on here. So we're not going to replace the foundation. That's replacing the whole building. So the foundation, we do what the preventive maintenance cost should be to protect your foundation. And sometimes there's not a lot you can do, but you can do soil samples around it. You can make sure that the building isn't shifting. You can make sure that you're keeping the drainage and the water away from the foundation. So we're not going to give you a cost on replacing the foundation. We're going to give you preventive maintenance costs to make sure that it lasts longer than 80 years, because that's the standard life of a foundation.
If unit owner A incurs X $1,000 issues in their apartment and unit, do they bear the cost or do the owners?
Depends if it's structural and the whole building has anything to do with it. So if it's a column that's running through their unit, well, it's obviously running through the unit above them and below them. So they're not going to bear the cost. That's a real interesting question. I would need to kind of know more about it. And I would ask Patrick to help me on that if I did have that conversation with somebody. So we would just kind of need some more details on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to depend on the governing documents, your declaration, how that's set up. So need more details, but definitely requires a legal eye to look at that one.
Brian, I want to bring you in real quick.
Yes.
And look, this is just, hard truth. And, I have a condo. I have a family that lives in condos, and this is a supply and demand thing. And I wanted to talk about the glitch bill. In March, there's going to be a glitch bill, and everyone's going, well, I'm just going to wait for the glitch bill because they're going to take care of all this. No, the glitch bill, they're going to be cleaning words up like, what does common area mean? And what does 3 stories mean? 3 stories is 30 feet tall. So if you have 30-foot ceilings, you're in a 3-story building. It's 1 story, but it's a 3-story building. So the glitch bill is going to clean up some of those things. This is not going to go away. It's so much bigger from an insurance standpoint and a safety standpoint. So this is a supply and demand issue, and there's only so many engineers and there's only so many contractors to go around. Brian, what have you seen as far as costs in roofing over the last 2 years post-COVID?
Post-COVID, it's upwards. It's over 100%. I mean, it's the supply is ridiculous. We're fortunate. We're large enough. We're top of the food chain in terms of we're direct connect to the manufacturers. So we're in a really good position. So we find that our pricing is fairly competitive. But just take a simple home. 2 years ago, you're putting it on for maybe $285 a square, and now you're putting it on for $450 a square. So do the math on that. That's just a single family home. So so supply for us is not an issue, fortunately, so far. And with the different materials like TPO, that was a big word that people may have heard. People couldn't get it. Installers couldn't get it. Contractors couldn't get it. Well, we could. And so that made an impact on, being available and being able to turn folks around to, those roofs you showed pictures of. Absolute nightmare. Those are great pictures. Love to get a hold of some of those and, have some of my own, but we're able to take care and service folks at any level with any supply need at this time.
Art, can you echo that on a concrete construction side? What are you seeing over the last couple of years?
Yeah, a little bit. I mean, luckily things are coming down a little bit, at least on the, as far as building concrete is concerned, and windows and doors are still out for another 6 to 9 months as far as, even for direct from manufacturers. But it's easing a little bit. So that's a good thing. I think we hit the top logistical nightmare point probably about 3 or 4 months ago. And it's slowing down a little bit. So things are moving in the right direction. But at the end of the day, as you've mentioned, I mean, there could be a lot of contractors out there. There could be a lot of roofers out there. Could be a lot of engineers out there. But are they really qualified for the type of work that a specific building needs? And that's really the key of it. So, and honestly, there probably isn't. So, I mean, we are probably just like everybody else. We're booking, months in advance, and probably within the next 6 months, it's going to be a year in advance. So I would strongly recommend for the board members that are on this call to start thinking about what's going to happen. Please, please, please. I also live in a condo. Trust me, I'm a part of it. Do not wait. The sooner you can get your arms wrapped around all of this, the sooner you can get M2E or another engineer or consultant look at your buildings and give you an assessment, the sooner you can be miles ahead of everybody else.
Patrick, should they wait? Yes or no question. And, you can get into that. And how prepared do you think communities are for what's happening right now and what's going to happen in the future?
I'll take the second question first. What we're seeing is, it runs the gamut. We've got clients that are dragging their feet. We've got clients that are moving forward. I expect that most people that are attending seminars and things like this are the folks that are in the batch of being proactive and wanting to get things done. And I think that's the best thing to do. What's going to happen with the glitch bill? You are exactly right, Rudy. This glitch bill is going to just fix and elaborate on certain things. It is not doing away with these requirements. If you think that Governor DeSantis is going to sign a bill that does away with these requirements after Surfside, you're not living in reality. So these are going to stay. And it's going to be expensive. I echo what you said. I feel for folks that are on fixed incomes that live in these heights, in these towers, but plan now, start now, put aside the money now, and get with M2E, get with your law firm that you utilize and create a plan. And that can be through loans, special assessments. There's a lot of different ways to take care of this. But if you wait to the last second, you're going to have assessments that are going to cause people to put their keys on their, on their kitchen counter and walk away. And we just can't have that. But there's going to be a glitch bill. It's going to fix little things, modify things here and there, but it is not doing away with these requirements. That actually happened a few years back. There was a good bill that was passed, addressing some of these different things. And then that bill, a follow-up bill a few years later, I think it was signed, I think it was Charlie Crist that signed that one. You see what happened to him. But that bill was a mistake. And I think that if we had that bill from the beginning and it stayed years ago, probably Surfside and some of these other issues that we're seeing wouldn't have occurred. But it's not going away. Yep. That's my opinion.
Michelle, on funding, I know some of the funding requirements have changed. I know like back in the day, that it depended on how delinquent some of the units were. You know, if 5% of the units were delinquent, you couldn't do a loan. I don't know if that's changed. I know some of the funding requirements have changed. I know some banks used to give a loan out for 50,000. Now they might not touch anything that, unless it's 250,000, because they're so busy, and they're going for, you know, the larger loans. Kind of take us through the loan genre on exactly kind of what's going on with, especially with this new legislation.
Well, City National Bank has committed to this industry, the homeowner condo associations. But we've also, as a not your giant bank, but a Florida-based bank, we have been able to tailor some things. And one of the things that we are able to do is lend to help fund reserves. So all the reserve conversations, people have been kicking the can for years. We can fund the loan proceeds into a reserve account and make the available to the association use for deferred maintenance as it becomes due. So they can slowly build up reserves into their budget. So it's a 24-month interest-only payment with option to extend 12 months and term out as needed and validated by components due. So we can customize the repayment terms as needed by the association. You know, we can go through the details because every association, as you guys have explained, they're all different sizes, shapes, financial stability. So we can sit down with the manager, the board members, unit owners. We attend board meetings to address questions, but we can walk through that option. But as far as delinquencies and kind of our credit policies, delinquencies 10%. Yes, we do look at delinquencies because we, you know, worst case scenario, we assume the building because the association didn't pay back the loan. We need to make sure that the association is, you know, strong financially. So we look at 3 years of financials. We look at delinquencies, foreclosures. So there is a little bit of analysis on our end to try to work. We do work with 50 units or more. So, you know, unfortunately for those that are smaller, it's tough for ours to do that, but we do make exceptions with the right mitigants. So I wouldn't say no to anything. And then the probably a high percentage of rentals, those who have 40% or more of rentals, those are tough communities for us to lend to as well. So, you know, we try to work with as many as we can based on the criteria that we have in our credit policy terms. So, you know, call us. I'm happy. I have associates down in your area, Rudy. I'm based in Tampa and cover the west coast of Florida all the way over to Orlando up to Jacksonville. So we can, you know, we can go pretty much anywhere in the state.
Yeah, same with us. We have an office in Miami, West Palm, Orlando, and Tampa. We go all the way up to Jacksonville, all the way to Naples, all the way into the Panhandle. I know Patrick and Becker are everywhere. Brian, I think you're based in just Orlando. Art, I know you guys are everywhere, all over Florida as well. And so look, we went a little long, over 8 minutes, but we still have all these participants in the room. Keep an eye out for the email from Peggy that will have all of our contacts informations, our logos, our emails, our phone numbers, and you guys can go ahead and reach out to us if you have any further questions. And I want to thank everybody for attending. We hope to do this at least once a month moving forward. And we would please tell your friends and colleagues about this. And I just want to thank everybody. And Peggy, I'll let you go ahead and close us out.
That's pretty much it. I wanted to thank everybody, thank the sponsors. Rudy, great information and great preparation for a nice professional presentation. And I hope everybody gets what they want from Santa, and happy holidays. That's it.
Happy holidays, everybody. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Everyone.